126 horsepower, 101 Newton meters of torque, a sublime 60-degree V-twin engine, the Aprilia Tuono 1000 from 2003. I mean, look at this beauty. I'm here to ask, are old nakeds better than new ones? Now, of course, in performance, they're actually quite comparable, although you do get stuff like the MT-10, which is basically a stripped off R1, that is silly fast. And 126 horsepower is nothing to be scoffed at. This is ludicrously fast for the bike category still. But it's not about specs. That's not what I'm asking. My thing is more character. This thing is styled to perfection. It's got a wide tank, it's got a comfortable seat, it's got a really good body position. Ergonomically wise, at 6 foot tall, it is so comfortable. And I've got a 74-inch reach as well. Getting the bar's got a nice bend in the elbows. It sits perfectly for me. But that's why I'm wondering, why do people not spend more money on older nakeds when they are just as good, maybe better, and definitely more characterful? Take my old bike on the channel, an SV650 from 2020. I loved that bike because of the trellis frame, and it looked like a Ducati monster, frankly. But if you look at the SVs from the late 90s and early 2000s, I'd argue they're even better looking. And most of those bikes have got over 100,000 miles and are still bulletproof.
Alright, we're here on a 2003 Tuono 1000 V2. Now, you'll have to forgive me immediately because this bike is pretty loud. It has an aftermarket Beowulf exhaust with the baffle in, surprisingly. But as per the intro of this video, the topic are old school naked bikes such as this. Carburetted naked bikes, you can go from 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever. But all comparing to modern day naked bikes, are they superior in any way? Now, what I'd like to note is just not necessarily just specs, stats, you know, horsepower, torque ratio, weight, because modern bikes over, I'd say, the last 10 years have tried everything in their power to get as fast as possible while meeting emission standards, while stripping the bikes full of any weight. Everything is, it's so light, it's so light. Unless you're in, of course, the adventure bike category, then they're incredibly heavy. But something like this Tuono is incredibly upright. It's essentially the Millie, but naked. It actually reminds me, because of the torque power and the numbers, of maybe like an 848 Street Fighter. Gearbox is extremely smooth, riding position is very comfortable as you're very upright. I will say the 1000 version, you do need quite long arms. I have a 74-inch reach and there's a tiny bend in my elbows, but it is quite a long bike. Otherwise you're going to be leaning over the upright bike quite a lot, I guess. Just because it's old doesn't mean it doesn't kick ass, because this thing is pretty quick. As you can see, this thing absolutely pulls. So this bike has 126 horsepower and 102 Newton meters of torque at 7,500 revs. It does redline at 11.5, 12k RPM, which I've got it to a couple times, and you get a nice little button down there, or button, let's just say light, that flashes when you do hit max revs, telling you, hey guy, you might want to change up. But the only thing that you could tell that makes this an older bike rather than modern, other than because the tank looks brand new, like the bike, other than the dash, you wouldn't know. It's got the old school digital with the really blocky letters. It's pretty basic, although it does show everything I kind of need to know. It doesn't have a fuel gauge or anything like that for anyone asking. It just has a light, like most older bikes. You can actually see out the mirrors though in this one, so for a sportier bike, it does have the mirrors, and although it's a naked, you still have got a windscreen on this one. It's super flickable. Obviously I'm doing low speed here. I'm not going to risk it at a higher speed right now. But it's effortless to move around. And the pull from like second gear here, for example, on the B roads, just second gear there, easily stretching its legs, and you really can feel that pull. The torque numbers, although it says at 7,500 RPM, you know, don't turn your nose up at the early revs on that. This thing, even low grunt, still pulls, still kicks ass. And with the windshield on here, it makes it, you know, pretty decent for longer rides, especially with the uprightness. And it's not an uncomfortable seat. It's a bit stiff. There's no reason you couldn't change that to some degree if you wanted to take it for longer rides. Waking everyone up with this exhaust. Morning. But you don't have to wring its neck out to have a great time on this bike. You don't have to get it into sixth gear and pin it and let it scream out. It just wants to be pulled. It's such a lovely bike to ride. And I think a lot of these older models really are. Oh, feels so good. This bike is brilliant. Proper characterful bike. And I think that's the major point of what I wanted to kind of discuss with these older bikes is, are they better than modern nakeds? Okay, what do we mean by better? Are they faster? No. Are they easier to control? No. Do they look better? Subjective. I would say I prefer the look of older motorcycles personally. Modern bikes with lean sensitive ABS, normal ABS, traction control, all the rider modes, you know, you've got rain, road, sport. Like my Triumph, my Speed Twin has rain, road and sport. Yes, it's not a naked bike. Well, it kind of is, like a roadster. Okay, so what bikes am I comparing this to in today's world? You've got stuff like the street triples. Do you prefer the street triple 1050s? Do you prefer the older models to that, the 90s versions? Or do you prefer the modern era of the 765 or the 1200s? Do you prefer the 675 from older days? And it's not even that long ago, but long enough. Do you like the MT-09s and the MT-10s? You know, the MT-10 is, in my head, essentially an R1 without the fairings. It is a ludicrous machine. It's proper Larry, it's a crazy hooligan bike, but it's got all the computerized things of modern motorcycling that kind of takes it away from me. You've got stuff like the SV650, the Honda Hornet 750, but they're just, you know, they're like a perfect bulletproof bike. But if you look back at like the late 90s and the early 2000s version of Hornets and of SVs, they're identical. They're also still bulletproof. You can go online and find so many with over 100,000 miles. And that just shows that it's not necessarily the newer ones that are better than the older ones. The older ones are just as good. Spec-wise, you've got to kind of give it to the newer ones because they have all the ABS, they have the lean-sensitive ABS, they have the traction control, they have all the screens, they have all your fuel gauge. They've got all the stuff you need to see if you care about that stuff. If you just want raw riding though, like this bike has no ABS, no traction control. You don't need it, you don't feel it. Unless you're in serious trouble, you're not going to really require it. A lot of people on modern bikes turn off the ABS and the traction control because they want it to feel more raw. For example, those newer Panigales, an 899 Panigale. My missus has an 848. She sat on an 899 and didn't like it because it felt too good. It felt too comfortable, she said. She likes the 848 because it's raw. You know, if you make a mistake, you know, you can end up in a hedge. It's kind of that when you ride, the fear and the excitement are one in the same. You don't get the excitement of riding necessarily without the knowledge of knowing it is dangerous. And you can come off. And if you don't respect the bike, you will get spat off into a hedge. But there's one disarming factor I think people need to understand when it's what necessarily is better at the moment. And that's the price tag. Used MT-10s at the moment, you're getting, the cheapest ones I've kind of seen are around £8,000. Now, granted, that has over 150 horsepower. It is silly fast. This has 126. You don't need more than 126, I promise you. You don't need it. You'd like it, but you don't need it. But this bike cost around £2,000. Now, this is not my bike. I'm being lent it by a friend for a week. But for £2,000 to get a mint, it has 26,000 miles on, so it's been looked after and used. It actually can get somewhere without breaking down, as most people have a phobia about Italian motorcycles. Does it find neutral very easily? No. You have to kick it down from second every single time. But is the engine absolutely mint? Yeah. And it feels it. It pulls like it's brand new. This, to me, if you didn't tell me it was used and it had a newer screen on it, I would think this is a brand new bike. And that's why I'm saying, have they improved so much that you go, they're better? I don't think they have, because older machines, to me, have more character, because they have more flaws. Perfection isn't necessarily the best thing ever. That's why I sold my SV650. Not because it wasn't amazing, because that bike is absolutely incredible. But more to the fact that I just didn't ride it because it was so... I don't want to use the word boring, because it sounds harsh, but it was boring. I could rip it around B roads and it was really fun, but because I have better bikes that I find more enjoyable, it had to go. But I sold that SV650 for double what this is worth. I would rather have this. As my one and only bike, maybe not. But if you're in a privileged position where you can have multiple bikes, and especially if you love naked bikes and you love older machines, take the sunglasses off and go have a look at some older machines, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised if you haven't already. People over 30 probably already know this, but for anyone that was born essentially after the bolts were put on this bike, go have a look back. Go see older machines, because I think you'll really love them. Not only are you getting a bike that doesn't feel 23 years old or older, you're getting bikes that last. I personally would side more towards the older, not just because of the raw and characteristicfulness of the bikes, but because of the price tag.